I have breaking news. Stephen A. Smith has shared interest in making a potential 2028 bid for the Democrat nomination for President of the United States. Looking at the betting odds, he has surged from just 0% since the end of January all the way now to about 8% in the betting odds, going up just 4 points in a single day. He has risen even above the former nominee, Kamala Harris, and is just behind Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, with Gavin Newsom retaking the plurality lead against Josh Shapiro. Usually I do the primary leader, but I want to explore a potential model showing what Stephen A would do to JD Vance in a 2028 hypothetical matchup. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. Looking at the electoral map and just kind of everything in general, I mean, JD Vance is clearly in the forefront to win the nomination with 48%. He's looking really strong in that spot for being the nominee of the Republican Party in 2028, and Donald Trump's performance in 2024 solidified the Republican Party's strength with working class voters and with minority voters as well. Now, somebody like Stephen A. Smith is definitely liberal on a lot of positions regarding, such as mildly liberal on abortion, and he's certainly liberal on like LGBTQ and certain things, but economically, I would suspect he's a lot more fiscally conservative in that department than, other presidents would be, or other Democrat presidents. I'd imagine he'd be very bad on foreign policy. I don't think he'd be great on foreign policy whatsoever, but I do think he'd actually build a pretty good base, and I actually think he'd give JD Vance a run for his money in the 2028 presidential election. My model factors in voter registration trends into the model, also looks at population increases and what kind of, political index those increases lean, the amount of money that campaigns spend, Republican events, Democrat campaign events. But right now, all we have is just the voter registration trends from January 2025, as well as December and February, from, the last couple months. And so looking at those, it's already taking shape in a couple states, moving certain states in a certain direction. Looking at the safe Republican states, Utah is in the safe column. And by the way, the popular vote here, I think, is about it's about Smith +3. So he does, I have him winning the popular vote. I think he does win the popular vote. But I don't think that JD Vance is quite going to necessarily lose as of right now. At least that's what the model is showing. It doesn't really show him losing, and those Pennsylvania voter registration trends from Scott Presler are really coming in handy here. Montana is in the Republican column as of right now. Nebraska coming in at just 19 points for JD Vance here. And if we go down and look at some of the margins in the district, you see here a likely margin for Smith of 7 points in Nebraska. Second, Kamala Harris only won the district by about 5 points, and so that's about almost a 2.5 point increase from the previous cycle. So fairly impressive. Kansas moves all the way down to roughly actually, I think it's about the same margin. It actually shifts to the right from 2024. Believe it or not, by just 0.4%. Nevada or Utah, does get about 5 points closer, almost 5 points closer in the general matchup. States like Oklahoma, continue to be stagnant. So roughly, give or take, Oklahoma doesn't really budge at all. In this hypothetical, North Dakota moves like literally 2 points to the left. Montana actually moves right by 0.3. So a lot of the red states are pretty stagnant in their movements. Even Wyoming shifts to the right by like a tiny bit. Missouri only shifting about 2 points to the left from 2024. Arkansas is about a 28-point win, which is down about 2 points from the last election. Louisiana and Mississippi do shift quite a bit back in the Democrat direction, like 2 and 3 points, respectively, give or take. Well, Louisiana shifts back, I think, about 3-ish, and Mississippi about 2 points in this general election matchup. Alabama is in good hands for JD. as well as some of these red states. South Carolina is in that column at about 14 points. So it does get significantly closer from 2024, and this is because the black vote does shift a tiny bit in Smith's column, just about a couple points. Indiana, a 19.3, basically getting slightly more Republican than the last election. So another interesting tidbit. In the state of Ohio, falling into the likely or safe Republican column, just about a 0.2 percentage point shift to the Republican direction. And in the state of Iowa, about a 10.3 percentage point shift. So that's a 3-point shift to the left from 2024 in the state of Iowa, which has been consistently moving in the Democrat direction or the Republican direction. And so the state of Florida, 13.3 in the last cycle. Right now it comes out about 10.7. So it's still in the safe column, but Vance obviously isn't going to do as good with Hispanics as Trump did against Kamala Harris, especially against somebody like Stephen A. I think Stephen A. probably wins Hispanics by roughly like 10 points, give or take. Vance does do better with white college educated voters, but does slightly worse with non-college whites and does okay. He performs all right against Stephen A. with Asian/other voters. So the map is a little bit of a wash, and a lot more Black and Hispanic voters turn out this time for Stephen A. So that's definitely something to consider. In the state of California, obviously in the safe column, about a 23.7 percentage point win. So roughly about 3.6 percentage points to the left. The state of Oregon, about 15.8. So it doesn't really move that much to the left because of the fact that Vance does gain with white college grads from the last election. Washington's is just 0.3 to the left. It barely moves to the left. The only reason why it moves left by a tiny bit is because Vance does slightly lose with non-college whites. And so that's why you're seeing the state stagnant, because Vance loses a point or two with the non-college whites, but gains like 2 or 3 points with white college. So you're kind of seeing a wash in some of these states. Colorado, roughly give or take about a 12.3 percentage point win. Again, that college educated shift is exactly what I'm talking about. In the state of Hawaii, in this matchup, give or take, we actually see it's about a 25.5 percentage point win, so slightly bluer from the last election as well. Alaska, 11.4, so it does get about 2 points more Democrat. And we even see, some of these other states here as well that we're about to fill in. Illinois, New York, these are solid in the Democrat column. 14.8 in the state of New York and 15.4 in Illinois for Smith. So he doesn't do as well as 2020 Joe Biden in these states, but he does improve from the last elections here. And we do see Connecticut, roughly give or take, at about 14.7, which is just about 0.2 percentage points more Democrat. So you're seeing the Northeast, since Vance is gaining with college whites, it doesn't really budge all that much to the left. It really doesn't. And the only reason why he's losing it with some of these voters again is because of the fact that, you do see, that shift with, the non-college whites a little bit into Stephen A's column just because of turnout differences with the Trump base. Vance does get most of them out, but some of them do stay home when voting in this hypothetical. Delaware moves just about 0.6 points to the left. Massachusetts moves roughly, give or take, about almost 3 points to the left. Vermont moves a tiny bit to the left in this election cycle, just a tad bit in the Democrat direction by just under a point. So barely moves in the leftward direction, but the turnout in the blue states is significantly higher than what it was back in 2024. Now, looking at all of these states, I even think New Jersey is plus 10 in this scenario. But again, guys, obviously, when you factor in voter registrations, by the time we get to 2028, I suspect that New Jersey's voter registrations are going to show that Republicans have gained massively in the state. And so in a D+3 environment, I'd only expect New Jersey to be about D+6, D+7 by the time we even get to that election. So it would trend even further from the right than the last cycle. New Hampshire and Maine, easy wins for Stephen A. as of right now. But again, when you have favorables come in from, civics.com, that's going to be a huge play. I think Vance is going to be a lot more popular in New Hampshire and Maine than Stephen is compared to other Democrats. However, you do see that Virginia, give or take, is about 7.4 percentage points in Stephen's favor. So he does win that one considerably. And Minnesota is 6.7 for Stephen A. So again, a pretty big win in Minnesota. I think he'd do very well in Minneapolis. He'd probably get like dictator margins in Minneapolis, but would do pretty poorly in some of the rural areas. So the state would kind of become even more politically divided than what it was before. The state of Texas, one of the only, or if not the only likely Republican state on the map, under 10 points, but over 5. An 8.7 percentage point win in this election, given the Hispanic vote significantly dropping for J.D. Vance in this matchup, definitely wouldn't help him out in the state. However, when you're looking at the final swing states, which is the states that you basically see in front of you, and yes, New Mexico is technically in swing state status. 4.7% in the state of New Mexico. Again, that state's been trending to the right for quite a while now. The voter registrations are looking really good. Republicans have been gaining, and so that's why it is in the lean Democrat column this time around. Looking at Georgia, just about a 1.5 point win for Stephen A. He would do very well in the Atlanta area, and Vance would probably lose some turnout in some of the rural areas in the country as of right now. However, Arizona would hold up fairly well for Vance at about R+4, Nevada at about just a point bluer than what it was in the last cycle, and the state of Michigan ends up being the most Republican out of the 3 Rust Belt states in this hypothetical matchup here at about Vance plus 1.2, so it doesn't even really shift that much to the left. It barely moves to the left. And it's because some of the rural areas would definitely shift in Vance's favor, but Stephen A. would probably make some minor gains in the Detroit area, but I don't think he'd fully recover and bring back the 2020 performance that Joe Biden could bring. Maybe the state's under a point. I wouldn't be surprised by that, but right now Michigan is seemingly going to be the most Republican out of the 3 Rust Belt states. It did shift the most Republican out of the 3 from 2020 to 2024, so that doesn't really surprise me at all. And when you're looking at the tilt states in this election, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina are the tilt states in this election cycle, with Pennsylvania putting J.D. Vance over the top, just a 0.7 percentage point win in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. And in the state of North Carolina, Vance barely pulling out a win at 0.6%. Now, again, in 2028, when voter registration trends kick in, even if you have the same popular vote win for Smith, I doubt North Carolina is going to be in the tilt Republican column. Vance probably ends up winning it by about 1 to 2 points in that hypothetical, even if it's D+3. So that's something to also consider. And the only tilt state for Stephen A. is the state of Wisconsin. He would more than likely run it up in the WOW counties and do very well in Dane and Waukesha, which would barely give him the state of Wisconsin in this hypothetical matchup. So Vance is barely losing or barely winning the Electoral College through Pennsylvania with just about 286 in the Electoral College to Smith's 252. This is what my hypothetical model is showing for the next election. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more election content just like this. And drop your comments down below. Tell me what matchup you want to see from the betting odds, or just any candidate in general. I think the fact that Stephen A. could potentially be the Democrat nominee would be a very interesting development to see take place as of right now. I will see you guys in the next video.